Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship, New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today is Easter Sunday, April 20th, 2025, and yesterday on the 19th, at least local time, Eastern Standard Time, a group from NOAA dove on Midway again at the wreck of USS Yorktown. She had been discovered by Dr. Ballard in 1998, and then in 2023, they dove the wreck to look at deterioration, to get better views with more modern stuff. And then this year, they're back at Midway. This is one of several deep sea dives that NOAA is doing over the course of this summer. And I believe it's the first of them. And today, they're going to do another dive later tonight. However, by the time you watch this, it will already have been done. Both of these dives are live recorded and available on YouTube. So we'll leave some links for those down below. Go ahead and watch them. They're a couple hours long, but they stream the entire dive down to the wreck, a couple hours on the wreck itself, and then coming back up. And the down and the back up didn't have too much, but the time spent on the wreck was super interesting because they got some experts together and they specifically had a hit list of, last time we were down on the wreck, we were able to see a lot more than we saw the first time, but not everything we wanted to see. So for example, the first time, 1998, Dr. Ballard finds the wreck. He takes some overall footage and gets some view on the cameras that they had at the time, but they didn't get to see everywhere, and the technology has gotten better in the last 20 plus years. So last time they were there, we were able to see more of the wreck, but there were some things on the edges of frames that we really wanted to see, and there were some things from survivor accounts that we really wanted to learn more about. One of those things was a mural in one of the elevator shafts that we knew existed. I'm not sure it had been seen on previous dive footage, but there were partial pictures of it from when the ship was in service, and there was some question about, well, what was that mural, and is it still around? And it was super cool yesterday seeing the ROV divers actually get their drone down the elevator shaft to look into the hangar and onto the bulkhead there at the mural for the first time since the ship was in service. It's the first time since June of 1942 that anybody had seen this mural. And it was in remarkably good shape. One of the things I think is really cool about this expedition is that they have called in experts of the battle. So they have a couple of NHHC's folks, our friend Frank and some others. They have the famous underwater archaeologist James Delgado. They have John Parshall, who wrote the book on the Battle of Midway, Shattered Sword, along with Anthony Tully. So all these folks had input on what they were going to look at, and it seemed like they had figured out their flight plan ahead of time, and they were going to look at this, look at that, look at the other thing as they were going through. And one of those things was the mural, and it was just incredible. Yorktown is something like 3 miles, maybe 3.5 miles underwater, and the ship was, of course, badly damaged from 3 separate attacks, dive bombers, torpedo planes, and a submarine, including damage from previous attacks at the Battle of Coral Sea that had never been repaired. The ship was not in good shape when she initially goes down, and yet, in this anaerobic environment underwater, her paint coatings are in remarkably good shape. So we were able to see things like the leather belts that you could strap yourself into a 20 millimeter in, still intact, signage that was still intact, and then of course paintings like this mural. It wasn't just that they were able to penetrate the hangar via the elevator shaft and see that. It was the quality of the lighting, the cameraing, the pilot work that was going on that allowed us to see it up close. Initially, they were looking at it much like you're looking at this mural on New Jersey, and just like looking at it real big. And then they started to zoom in and get really close on various places, including the bottom right corner. They were hoping to find an artist's name, but they did find at the bottom there was some writing that said something like the voyages or the travel of USS Yorktown. And like, oh, there are murals like this on other ships that show where the ship sailed. I wonder if that's on there. And we hadn't previously known it, but when they then zoomed in, particularly in the Atlantic around Norfolk, where Yorktown spent much of 1941, they were able to see these like white dotted lines on the blue background come through. And they believe that it had been a darker blue paint that had faded out over time, but it's very similar to this mural that we have on Battleship New Jersey. And our friend Frank from Naval History and Heritage Command even brought up that murals like this were common. The most famous one's probably the one in USS Missouri's wardroom. This one on New Jersey is actually a framed picture. It's not painted on the bulkhead like the one on Yorktown or Missouri, but it's doing the same thing. It's showing the travels of the battleship, specifically during World War II. So between 1943 and 1946. And 1946 when she comes home from her last World War II deployment, the occupation of Japan. And it's remarkable the kind of stuff that's depicted is very similar. These murals usually have the United States at the center, which was really interesting to see on Yorktown. They have the Eurasian continent split in half so that America's in the middle, and those are off to the side. Granted, the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans are the more important for this time period. But much like this one, it is very much centered on the United States. It shows the little lines, which are exactly the same as this. One thing that one had, and I believe Missouri's has, but ours does not, is it features a depiction of the ship. Now that we've talked about Yorktown's mural a little bit, this one was presented as a present to the ship when she was recommissioned in the 1980s. I'm not sure if it was created at that time specifically to be given as a present, or if it was something that had been created earlier on and then taken off by some of the crew at a previous decommissioning and then brought back to the ship in 1982. But you can see down here, in a slightly different font than everything else is written, presented 28 December 1982 by J.P. Laughlin and E.S. Martin, both Chief Fire Control men in the U.S. Navy. So potentially former crew members of this ship. Again, it is a paint on canvas that's framed. We found this down in the collection space, which makes us think it was here on the battleship. This space where we are right now, Chief's Mess, was gutted. So it's possible it was in here, and when they gutted the space for another use, they took this to the collection space. It's also possible that, like many of the other framed objects and decorative things around the ship, it was removed when the ship was put in mothballs and stored elsewhere and then was taken there. But thanks to the pictures we found of Chief's Mess, it showed that this was displayed right here where we have it hanging right now. The screw was even still in the wall. We had put a different picture on it. We had to take that one off to put this one up. But we were able to prove that at least a couple years after this had been donated, this is where it was displayed. So we were able to take it out of the collection space, put it back where it goes, somewhere that folks on the tour now can see it. Anyway, the stuff that we're learning from diving on Yorktown, a ship that was sunk more than 80 years ago, is really, really interesting. The wreck site is revealing a lot of things, stuff we didn't know about how the ship looked during the battle, stuff about the damage she takes during the battle, and stuff about the long-term preservation of vessels that we've only started to learn since, say, the 1980s, when we start to find ships like Titanic and Bismarck, and then revisit them again over the years and see how they are deteriorating over time in very deep, very dark, very cold water. So we're seeing things like where there was oil, lubricating oil, grease, things like that. You see these microbial colonies blooming up out of them. But the wood deck on Yorktown is largely intact. Places where there's been severe fire damage, like around the uptakes on Yorktown where one of the bombs hit, you see is much more corroded than the rest of the hull where paint is still intact, or even where murals are still really, really visible. Like, I cannot believe that this drone goes into the hangar 3.5 miles underwater, 3.5 miles from the closest sunlight, And it allows us to look back in time some 83 years at something that has not been seen since June of 1982. Where the technology is getting and where the will of folks like us is taking us is really exciting for me, because we found a lot of the major World War II shipwrecks. There aren't all that many big names left, but the fact that we're going back to Yorktown for a third time, that there's another expedition going to Iron Bottom Sound later this year, that we're going to some of these wreck sites over time because we want to see this, it makes me feel really good. I love seeing that. I love that we're learning stuff from this, and it's starting to make me think that if something ever happens while I'm here on the battleship and we can't preserve her anymore, maybe the best thing to do is to take her out into the deepest, darkest, coldest, most oxygen-free water we can find and sink her there, so that 80 or 100 years later, folks can go down and look at the wreck and see a ship that's relatively intact compared to in shallow water where it's going to eventually be taken over by marine life. And what are some cool lessons that you think we can learn from exploring shipwrecks like these? Let us know in the comment section down below. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate the support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. There are also some links in the description below to the footage that they are recently gathering at Yorktown. Be sure to check it out and stay tuned for future expeditions. They've got a couple this summer and we're really excited to see what they find. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find about the museum and our channel. Thanks for watching.